As far as sitcoms aimed at younger audiences go, Drake and Josh isn't exactly one you'd associate with handing out life lessons compared to, say, some of the Disney Channel shows. There's one Drake and Josh episode in particular that I have been thinking a lot about lately. It's the one where they bring a dangerous criminal into their house. What is that episode's lesson? And is that lesson portrayed well? Chapter 1. A very special episode. Season 4, Steered Straight, I would say is the closest thing to Drake and Josh having a very special episode. For those that don't know, a very special episode is an episode of a sitcom that deals with a serious topic that wouldn't usually be discussed on that show, such as smoking cigarettes, doing drugs, or alcohol use. The reason very special episodes exist is for the sake of educating younger viewers on the dangers of those things. Very special episodes have a sordid reputation in the sitcom world as being preachy, out of touch, and just downright lower quality episodes. The reason for this is simple. They aren't organic stories. The best stories are the ones that come from a deep desire to share a perspective that the artist behind the story holds. Very special episodes are often nothing more than PR stunts, put forth to fill a quota, which is not conducive to writing a good script. If Steered Straight is supposed to be a very special episode, it does an excellent job of not feeling like one. Instead, Steered Straight feels like a story that the writers of Drake and Josh really wanted to tell using these characters. The inciting incident of the episode is Drake getting fake IDs so that he and Josh can go see Josh's favorite band at a club that you have to be over 21 to get into.
Illegal to use fake IDs.
Yeah, well, it's illegal to rob banks, but people do it.
Something unique about the episode is that it is, I think, the only time in the entire Drake and Josh series that the existence of alcohol is referenced.
It's not like we're gonna drink or anything. We're just gonna go and listen to some music.
While I think that clarification is mostly there because the network wanted viewers to know that their favorite sitcom duo isn't taking part in underage drinking, I think it actually serves the message of the episode well, as it shows that as a young person you might be motivated to break the law and get a fake ID, even for something as mild as going to see your favorite band and get churros.
He tempted me with churros!
The reason Steered Straight doesn't come off as preachy like certain other very special episodes is that it doesn't harp for too long on the fake ID aspect of the episode. But in doing this, I question if it loses out on teaching the lesson at all. The fake ID element is kind of forgotten by the time the conflict starts to ramp up, and the episode goes from something relatable, like wanting to see a band at a club you aren't allowed into, to a conflict that is a little less universal. Once the parents send Drake and Josh to be steered straight by having the cops simulate arresting them, they find themselves face to face with a real criminal who steals the cop car of the officer who was arresting them. So now that the episode has all but abandoned its fake ID lesson in favor of this new unexpected story, how does the episode progress? Chapter 2: How Steered Straight Goes Off Course. What makes Steered Straight such a memorable sitcom episode is its unorthodox conflict involving Drake and Josh getting mixed up with this real criminal. Since this criminal first meets Drake and Josh while they are handcuffed in the back of a cop car, he believes them to be criminals themselves, which Drake and Josh allow him to believe as they think it's their best chance of surviving the situation. So while this kind of derails the initial fake ID plot point in favor of something more absurd, I do think this episode might still maintain its lesson. This episode is, after all, about teaching people that they shouldn't break the law. And while this episode makes you think it's going to show you what the police will do if you break the law, there are worse consequences to being a criminal, mainly encountering other criminals. This is reinforced by Drake and Josh using their fake ID names around the criminal.
Well, I'm Jefferson Steelflex.
Alvin Yakitori.
It's almost symbolic. Like their old identities died when they broke the law, and now they're fully Jefferson Steelflex and Alvin Yakitori. Some real Heisenberg stuff. However, even if that's where I think the lesson of the episode was going, how well does the episode convey that message? Most of what happens from the moment Drake and Josh meet the criminal to the episode's conclusion are a series of different attempts by the brothers to get themselves out of the situation. They act like they are going to rob their own house in an attempt to get the criminal to drop them off at home, only for it to backfire when the criminal insists he rob it with them. They try to call 911 while handcuffed by having Josh dial with his nose, but he sneezes on the phone. They try to cover for why they're using the phone by saying they're going to attempt a high-profile kidnapping.
Kidnap the governor.
Yeah, kidnap the governor.
Which leads to the criminal bringing in his criminal friends to help with the crime. Drake and Josh finally get out of the situation by acting as though Drake is mercilessly beating Josh, which scares away the criminals. So while this is classic sitcom writing, as it constantly puts Drake and Josh in more perilous situations while they try to get out of them, I do think that the episode starts to lose its lesson in the chaos. Drake and Josh don't seem to actually learn anything from the experience, and they never have a moment of self-reflection towards how they got in that situation in the first place. The message I mentioned earlier about how even doing a seemingly small crime like getting a fake ID can cause you to end up around real dangerous criminals is never really made too clear at the close of the episode. In the final scene, it almost seems as though the narrative wants to point the finger at Drake's mom and pin the blame on her for the events of the episode,
Please don't have us arrested again.
Yeah, I've never been so scared in my life.
rather than apply culpability to Drake and Josh. Perhaps by blaming Drake's mom, the episode is trying to criticize the idea of a scared straight program, as I'm sure programs like that don't work very well. But I think this final scene doesn't do such a good job at properly reinforcing what should be the episode's core lesson. However, does that actually matter? Chapter 3. How should a lesson be conveyed? Let's say the Steered Straight episode ended with more of an emphasis on its lesson. Would it have been a more effective episode? If Steered Straight went full very special episode and heartfeltly poured out its lesson in its final scene, it, 1, wouldn't be very Drake and Josh, and 2, probably would have gotten an eye roll out of its audience. Perhaps leaving the mention of the fake IDs to a small couple of lines in the beginning and allowing that to simply be the foundation of the episode, rather than having "don't get fake IDs" dominate the narrative like so many very special episodes would, it allows the audience to simply absorb what the episode is putting out there. It also enhances the rewatch value of the episode. One might go out of their way to want to watch the funny episode where Drake and Josh talk about kidnapping the governor, whereas one would probably be more likely to change the channel if it were that one preachy episode about not buying fake IDs. I do think that the episode could have had a little bit more emphasis on the idea that Drake and Josh were the reason that Drake and Josh were in the situation. Not just because that reinforces the episode's lesson, but because it's more interesting to watch a story where the characters are in a situation because of mistakes they made. By laying so much of the blame on Drake's mom, who wasn't even in much of the episode, we lose out on some of that. So what can we learn from an episode like this? Besides, don't get fake IDs. We can see how an episode can do a better job at teaching a lesson if it doesn't harp too much on that lesson, and instead focuses on telling a compelling and interesting story, which is something that Steered Straight certainly succeeds in. However, we can also learn that sometimes you can go too far into the other extreme, and in trying to avoid fully engaging with the subject matter of your episode, you may lose out on some aspects of the story that are important, such as reinforcing your lesson at the end of your story. All in all, Steered Straight is an absolute classic Drake and Josh episode, and the only episode of the show to deal with this sort of subject matter. And it's also the reason that I always assume criminals carry sugar on them. But let's take the conversation to you. Honestly, I'm on the fence about this episode. I'm pondering if its lesson is better served by not being focused on, or if the episode's reluctance to really take a stance on its subject matter actively harms its lesson. Let me know in the comments below which side you are on and why. Hey, if you like this video, maybe you'd like to see this other video right here. If you like what I do and want to see me do more of it, consider becoming a channel member or supporting my Patreon. Link in the description. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time.